Okay, so you've brought us some really interesting sources today. We're looking at stun gun laws in Georgia.
Right, and specifically how that connects to the recent events at Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall.
Exactly. We've got legal stuff, news reports on what went down, and even some ACLU guidance.
A good mix.
So the plan is basically to get a handle on the rules for stun guns there and, how that all plays out with the right to protest, especially when things get heated, like at that meeting.
Yeah, it's a perfect set of materials for that. You get the law on paper, and then you see it applied, or at least tested in a pretty charged situation. And what's really fascinating, I think, is that line between someone having a tool, a less lethal option for safety, and the state needing to keep order, especially when you mix in protests and free speech.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Georgia's stun gun laws. What are the absolute basics we need to know?
Well, at a high level, Georgia is relatively open about it. For most people, you can buy and carry stun guns, tasers, without needing a special permit or license.
Yeah.
That's the baseline.
No permit needed.
Okay. Now, the state law does define them.
Yeah.
It has to deliver over, I think it's 20,000 volts, or be powerful enough to actually incapacitate someone. That's the threshold in the statute.
So like those gag gift things, the shocking pens, they wouldn't count?
No, probably not. Not in this legal context anyway.
Yeah.
We're talking devices designed for, significant effect.
Gotcha.
And it helps to know the difference between contact stun guns, the ones you have to touch someone with, and the projectile kind, like tasers that shoot out probes.
Right.
Generally, Georgia law doesn't treat the contact ones as firearms,
Right.
but the projectile ones, they often do.
Interesting distinction.
Oh, and age limit. You have to be 18 to buy or even to possess one.
18, okay.
And you don't need any kind of permit just to, keep one at home or in your car, on your own property.
That seems pretty clear for just having one. But are there limits? Like places you can't carry them or people who aren't allowed them at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are definite restrictions. For instance, if someone's a convicted felon, it's actually a felony for them to possess a taser in Georgia.
A felony just to possess it?
Yes. It reflects, I think, a judgment about risk, right?
Right.
Giving those tools to someone with a serious criminal history.
Makes sense. Anywhere else they're banned?
The big one is school property. Totally illegal to bring stun guns or tasers onto K through 12 school grounds. Same for VOTEC schools, colleges, universities, even school activities off campus or school buses.
Right. Schools seem like an obvious sensitive area.
Exactly. Now, there's an exception for peace officers, obviously. They can carry them.
You mentioned projectile stun guns, like tasers are treated differently, maybe like firearms. How does that work?
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
Because the state considers them firearms, you actually need a firearms permit to carry one.
Ah, okay. So the same permit you'd need for a handgun.
Pretty much. And getting that permit has its own rules. You have to be 21, not 18.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a felony conviction, obviously, or certain other convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there are rules about recent mental health or substance abuse treatment. You might need special approval in those cases.
So way more hurdles for the projectile kind.
Definitely. Contact stun guns are relatively easy to possess legally. Projectile ones fall under much stricter firearm regulations.
Okay, so that covers who can have them and where. Now, what about using them? When is it legal and when does it cross the line? This feels really relevant to the town hall incident.
It really does. This is where it gets sharp. Georgia law says you can use a stun gun or taser defensively.
Self-defense.
Right. If you reasonably believe it's necessary to protect yourself or someone else from immediate unlawful force. Standard self-defense idea just applied here.
And there's always a but, isn't there?
There is. Using it offensively. That's a crime. Starting a fight with it, using it when you're not actually threatened, that's illegal.
And the penalties probably get worse depending on the situation.
Absolutely. If you have a stun gun while you're committing or even trying to commit certain other felonies, things like assault, battery, rape, burglary, car theft, drug crimes, that possession itself can be an additional felony charge.
Wow. Stacking charges.
Exactly. And they get even tougher for things like carjacking with a stun gun or taser. The law specifically calls that out with harsher penalties.
So it's not just using it, but having it during another crime that's a big problem.
A very big problem. And it can get complicated. Even if a law doesn't specifically say stun gun, using one in a way that causes or is likely to cause serious injury, that could be charged as aggravated assault.
Which is a serious felony.
Very serious. Up to 20 years. The Georgia Supreme Court even said stun guns could be considered offensive weapons during an armed robbery, depending on how they're used.
So using one in an assault is aggravated assault. What about using one during a break-in?
Same idea. Felony aggravated assault potential. Using it during a home invasion, car break-in, or even just having one on you while you also have illegal drugs, like marijuana. All those could lead to felony charges.
Okay.
The main point is you have to use it strictly for lawful self-defense. Anything else, you risk serious criminal trouble. And remember, too, that cities or counties might have their own, even stricter rules sometimes.
Right. Always check local ordinances. Okay, that gives us a really solid legal picture. Let's shift to that Marjorie Taylor Greene town hall. April 15th, 2025. What do the reports say actually happened?
So it was at the Acworth Community Center in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like there were quite a few protesters there, inside and out.
Protesting what, generally?
The reports mentioned opposition to Trump's policies, budget cuts,
Mm-hmm.
and there were signs about potential insider trading concerns. Something of Green stock buys after tariff announcement, so definitely a politically charged crowd.
And things got disruptive inside, not just quiet signs.
Apparently so. Reports say one man started booing pretty much as soon as Green began talking.
Okay.
Then others started shouting critical questions about Trump, fascism, some comments about Elon Musk and DOGE coin, tying Green to service cuts they didn't like.
Right.
There was also booing when she talked about
Mm-hmm.
potentially pardoning January 6th folks and anti-abortion activists. So, yeah, it sounds like the mood inside got pretty tense.
And how did law enforcement respond? They didn't just let it happen.
No, they got involved. Reports say multiple protesters, at least 6, were removed from the event.
Okay, removed. But then the tasers came out.
That's what the reports indicate. 2 protesters were apparently tased by police because they were resisting being removed.
Resisting removal.
Yeah, one account described a man in a black hoodie who sort of scuffled with officers, got away briefly, and then was tased near an exit.
And how did the rest of the crowd react to the taser use?
Interestingly, some reports said parts of the crowd actually cheered and clapped when that happened.
Wow, that is striking. Were there arrests?
Yes, 3 people were arrested. 2 men, 40 and 45, charged with battery and obstruction, and a 28-year-old woman was arrested for using vulgar language. Apparently violated a city ordinance.
And the police confirmed the ones tased were among those arrested.
Yes, the police statement afterwards said the 2 who were arrested were the same 2 individuals who were tased.
What was the police rationale? Why did they feel the need to use tasers?
The Acworth Police Department put out a statement. They said the protesters were disruptive, they resisted officers' commands, they threatened the officers, and were basically creating a public safety risk.
A threat. Okay.
They called it a deliberate attempt to disrupt. And they specifically said that taser use was necessary because the protesters had created an imminent public safety threat. That was their justification.
And Representative Greene herself, what was her take?
She called the town hall peaceful, said the protesters were out of line. She was glad they were thrown out, and she praised the police actions.
Mm-hmm.
She also suggested people who disagree should, vote, not disrupt meetings.
Definitely different perspectives on the same event. The reports also mentioned this isn't exactly isolated, right? That other Republicans have had rough town halls recently.
That's right. The sources mentioned a trend. More confrontational town halls for GOP lawmakers lately. Names like Sparts, McCormick, Edwards came up. Some are apparently shifting to virtual events or just pausing in-person ones because of it.
So it fits into a bigger picture of maybe more intense political expression right now.
It seems that way. More direct, sometimes disruptive engagement.
Which brings us right to that intersection point. The stun gun laws, what happened at the town hall, and the right to protest. This is where the ACLU guidance seems really relevant.
Exactly. The First Amendment protects peaceful assembly and expression. That's core ACLU stuff. And that protection is strongest in places like streets, sidewalks, parks, traditional public forums.
What about a community center booked for a town hall? Is that the same?
It's usually considered public property, so First Amendment rights do apply, especially if protesters aren't blocking access or messing with the main event. But, and this is key for the town hall context,
Yes.
private property owners or the people organizing an event in a public space like a community center, they can often set rules. Rules about speech and conduct within that specific event or space.
Ah, so Greene's team or the venue might have had rules about disruptions.
It's certainly possible, and that could affect how things are viewed legally. It's also crucial, as the ACLU points out, that counter-protesters have rights too. Police have to treat everyone equally.
Okay. What else does the ACLU guidance mention? Recording, permits.
Generally, you have the right to photograph or record in public spaces. For permits, you usually don't need one for just marching if you're not blocking traffic. But you might need one for bigger organized stuff, blocking streets, big rallies with sound systems, things like that.
And they can't deny a permit just because they don't like the message.
No, that's viewpoint discrimination. Not allowed.
What about police telling people to leave, dispersal orders?
They could do that, but only if there's a real immediate danger, like a riot, serious disorder, blocked traffic causing safety issues, a clear and present danger.
And they have to give people a chance to leave.
Yes. Clear warning, enough time, tell them what happens if they don't leave, and make sure there's a safe way to leave.
Okay. And if you are stopped or arrested during a protest, what are the key rights?
ACLU says, stay calm, keep your hands visible. Don't argue or resist, even if you think it's wrong.
Ask if you're free to go.
Yes. If you're being detained, ask why. If you're arrested, ask why. Then, crucially, say you want to remain silent and you want a lawyer. Immediately.
You get a phone call?
Right to a local call. And if it's to your lawyer, police can't listen in. You don't have to consent to a search.
Can they pat you down?
They can pat you down if they reasonably suspect you have a weapon. And they can search you more thoroughly after a lawful arrest. But they generally need a warrant to search your phone or camera and look at your pictures or videos. They can't just take it and start deleting things.
So circling back to the town hall, that question of whether it was a fully open public forum or a space with organizer-set rules seems really central.
Absolutely. How you classify that space and what rules were legitimately in place, that really shapes how you analyze the protests and the police response, including using those tasers.
Okay, let's try to pull us all together. We've looked at Georgia's stun gun laws, mostly legal to own and carry, but big exceptions for felons in schools.
Right. And the crucial difference between legal defensive use and illegal offensive use. Plus, how having one during another felony ups the ante.
Then we dove into the Greene Town Hall. The disruptions, the protests, the police removing people, using tasers, making arrests, all justified by police as a response to disruption and safety threats.
And we heard Greene's reaction praising the police and criticizing the protesters.
And finally, we layered on the First Amendment context. The right to protest, especially in public spaces, but also the fact that organizers can sometimes set rules for conduct at specific events.
And the procedures police need to follow for dispersal, and the rights people have if stopped or arrested. It's a complex mix.
It really is. You see these different legal ideas, gun laws, free speech, public order, all colliding in a real-world event.
Exactly. The permission to have a less lethal weapon, the laws against misusing it, people exercising protest rights, the need for safety and order, and then law enforcement deploying force. It all intersects right there.
So maybe a final thought to leave folks with. As these kinds of intense public meetings seem to be happening more, how does that balance change between protest rights and keeping order?
Yeah, how does it evolve? And what role do tools like stun guns and tasers end up playing in that whole dynamic?
It really makes you think about the legal tightrope everyone's walking. Protesters, organizers, police, a lot of different factors and perspectives in play in these tough situations.